Our next guest is an Iraq War veteran and Purple Heart recipient. She is currently a United States Senator from Illinois. Here's my conversation with Senator Tammy Duckworth.
Senator, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Good to be on.
So I apologize for having to start by talking about Tucker Carlson, but I am going to. So you are a senator. You are a Purple Heart recipient. Fox News host Tucker Carlson referred to you as a coward because you basically, in talking about the removal of statues, said that a national dialogue was in order. Hopefully I'm getting all those details right. But what is it like to receive criticism in regards to your courage from someone like Tucker Carlson?
I mean, he's a gnat. He's a gnat, and you just got to ignore him or swat him away, you know? It's his job to push the Trump administration's efforts to distract us from the real issues at hand. And the real issues are the failures of this president. I mean, we have over 130,000 dead Americans from COVID-19 because they botched their response. There's still a bounty on the heads of U.S. troops in serving in Afghanistan, and they don't want us to talk about the issues at hand. So you just got to swat them away and refocus on the problems that our country is facing right now and trying to find solutions to them.
Tucker Carlson framed it as you were once injured while serving in the Illinois National Guard, which is not the whole story. Could you just speak a little to your injury and how that phrasing is maybe not fair?
Yeah, well, I was injured in service as a member of the Illinois National Guard in Iraq. I was federally activated by President Bush, and he makes it sound like I was hit by an RPG over Peoria. I was actually hit just north of Baghdad, fighting the enemies who would threaten American democracy.
We were just speaking, our 2-year-olds are a day apart in age. You've got a 5, I've got a 4. I, like most parents, I'm assuming you're the same. I'm desperate for them to go back to school in the fall, as long as that is a safe place for both them and their teachers. Can you talk about how important childcare is going to be for parents, especially working parents, single parents, come the fall?
Well, it's absolutely critical for parents to be able to go back to work. They can't go back to work if schools are closed and their kids can't go back to school. Imagine the single mom who works at McDonald's supplying my kid with the chicken McNuggets that sometimes are the only source of food that my daughter will eat. That single mom needs schools to be open so kids can go back to school. But the schools are not adequately supplied with PPE and social distancing guidelines and all the things that they need to keep kids safe. That mom can't go back to work. So we desperately need childcare in this country. It's something we've been talking about a long time. But now with COVID-19, it's very clear to us that we need some sort of a national childcare system.
Because there is this consensus, it's a part of bipartisan consensus that school is important for kids, right? No one's arguing about that. Do you feel as though you're making headway with your colleagues across the aisle insofar as taking steps to make school a safe place to go in the fall? Or do you think that there's sort of just this willful ignorance that it's all going to be fine and back to normal?
Well, we've been talking about in the Democratic caucus about making schools safer. Now, the problem is that Betsy DeVos, the Secretary of Education, has no idea how she's going to do this and actually has not published any real guidelines for what schools should be doing. They, again, seem to be like, okay, you guys all fend for yourself, and you can't send kids back to school. I mean, I'm terrified of sending my daughter back to a school if that school can't be properly sanitized and she can't be kept safe. But on the other hand, I'm equally terrified that I'm her sole source of education. I'm homeschooling her, and I'm not trained to do that. I'm trained to fly a helicopter, and I'm a U.S. Senator, but I'm not a trained educator. So I worry that she's going to fall behind in school if she's got to rely on me to be her teacher. And I'm sure working families all across this country are feeling exactly the same way. We have to solve this problem. We have to provide childcare. We have to provide guidelines. We have to keep our kids safe. And I will make sure that my colleagues know that these are critical issues.
You mentioned helicopters, and I want to ask again, based on your history of service, how it feels to see a helicopter being deployed to disperse protesters, as has happened in the wake of the protests across this country. How do you feel when the president calls in the National Guard for photo ops?
I was furious. I was absolutely furious. And I made it clear that I was. And in fact, General Milley, their chairman of the Joint Chiefs, called me personally to apologize for his involvement in that. But I actually have a request into the National Guard right now asking for the briefings, the mission briefings, the risk assessments, everything to do with those two particular helicopters, one of which, by the way, was a Lakota, which is a medevac helicopter. And so its use in suppressing peaceful protesters could be in violation of the Geneva Convention. So I am personally looking into this, and having have this background in aviation, I'm able to ask the right questions. But I was absolutely furious that this president would politicize our military, our brave men and women who, by the way, the DC National Guard probably had many of their friends and families who were peacefully protesting as well.
You mentioned being able to ask the right questions. Do you find that has any use in an era where nobody seems to be willing to give answers, and the president seems to use every lever at his disposal to, prevent people from giving answers?
Well, they can prevent the answering as long as they want to, but I'm going to keep asking those questions loud and clearly, and making sure that the American people know that these are questions that must be asked, that the American people know that this president is truly politicizing our military and is not doing his job as both the leader of our nation when it comes to things like responding to COVID-19, or as commander-in-chief when it comes to protecting the lives of our men and women who are serving in harm's way right now. So I'm not going to let them go and distract us, and I'm not going to let him talk about other issues when the real issues at hand are 125,000 up to 130,000 dead Americans and more, potentially, and also our troops are in harm's way. I will keep asking those questions as loudly as possible so the American people know that there are issues that we need to be addressing.
One of the things you were being attacked for was basically an answer that was taken out of context to make it sound like that you were in favor of tearing down George Washington statues. Obviously, people serve from all different political parties, and I think you have every right to disagree with them. I don't think you have any right to question their courage. But can you just talk about where you would stand on both the idea of tearing down statues and also people's opinions of those statues?
Yeah, of course I don't support tearing down George Washington's statue. And no more would I support that than I would having, the Purple Heart ripped from my chest. The Purple Heart is a medal that he actually enacted and originated with George Washington. But I do respect people's rights to have their opinion. It's why I was willing to die to defend this country. I was willing to die to defend their rights to have their opinions, and people are welcome to do that. Now, let me make it clear. George Washington is very different than Confederates who took arms as traitors against our nation. And again, this is all a way to distract us from the issues at hand. A failed president who continues to speak highly of Vladimir Putin, even after he put bounties on American troops' heads. A failed president who spoke highly of the communist Chinese and did nothing to stop and fight this pandemic. And now we have 130,000 dead Americans. And the latest projection that I saw today is maybe as many as 240,000 dead Americans if this virus continues on this path. So don't let them distract you. Don't let them distract us. This is about this president failing to do his job as commander-in-chief and as president of the United States. And they want us to be talking about other things, but we've got to come right back to what the American people and working families need right now, which is real leadership in Washington, and we don't have it in the White House.
Well, I want to end by saying how impressed I am that your kids did not distract us at all during this interview. Right before we started, you panned the camera over, and you're basically adjacent to a playroom right now. So please pass along my thanks to your children, and thank you as well.
Thank you so much, and same to you and yours.
And I hope to see you in person next time, Senator.
That'll be great.